All right. Hello, hello, hello to everybody who is out there looking and listening and watching us right now. Welcome to Melanin and Moonlight. I am one of your co-hosts, Tyrell Collins.
I'm the other one, Vernon Scott, and welcome to the podcast. Welcome, everybody. How are you doing, Tyrell?
I'm doing good. Yes, everybody, my backgrounds may look a little bit different. It's still there, so don't feel like, like, oh, I've, moved across, across seas or anything. It's still there for right now, but I've officially moved, y'all. So, I've officially relocated. So,
Yes.
we out here doing the thing.
Moving on up, probably on the east side for real.
But how are you, Verdi?
I'm doing pretty good. I had a wonderful day yesterday. I don't know. I woke up in a good mood.
Wonderful.
And
Ain't that good? Ain't that so
right,
good?
it's so
Wake up
good.
feeling good.
And then
Yeah.
like from there, I ran a couple errands, got way too drunk at karaoke last night. It's not a norm, people. It's not a norm. I do drink at karaoke because I love me a good margarita, but I don't go there to get drunk. I don't go there to get wasted, but I don't know what it was. It was not the first time I got a pitcher while being there. So just to put that out there, because I did drink a pitcher.
Mhm. But here's the question. But did you do karaoke though?
I sure did. I sure
Okay.
did.
Well, but you see, so that you have a justifiable excuse because it's only like you can only have certain liquid that gives you that courage to even get, to get on the stage or to get a microphone and do karaoke. So
Right,
mm-mm,
right.
we don't judge here.
Absolutely not. But it was really
No.
good. I didn't think it was going to be as packed as it was yesterday because usually it's a nice little
Mm,
small venue. Everybody, it's at a Mexican restaurant here. But it's like usually
mm,
probably the longest the list would be about 12 people. Last night was like 25. Like usually we can go there, everybody sings about four songs or something. But nope, I only sang two. The other people only sang two. And by the time my homegirl she finished her second song, we are on the way out because this place was closing in like 30 minutes anyway. So it's like wow, but it was a good time. It was a really, really good time. So, and then woke up today in a good
mm.
spirits, a little bit not tipsy, not hungover or anything like that, because I don't know who that is. A hangover, who's that? But just in a state of recovery because it was just a very fun night, and I was just like, I'd rather stay here in bed and just bask in the beauty of what yesterday was. So. Yeah, it's been a good
Mm.
day.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. I love it. Ooh.
So what is on your radar for today?
Ooh, so the first thing, I think we kind of want to get into is there is a clip that was recently posted on Instagram from Gay Magazine, and apparently this man who is presumably a straight man, he was having this video rant where he was talking about aspects of can gay men teach their heterosexual sons to be straight? I think that was one of the questions because, like I say, it was a rant, but the basis of his video was getting at is there confusion in a household when you are trying to raise children and you are under the umbrella of the LGBTQ, kind of, umbrella. And so specifically, he wanted to speak to the nature of masculinity and some of his rhetoric was surrounding that if you're raising if your children are innately heterosexual and you are gay, what is it that you can you actually teach or model masculinity or model these kind of heteronormative aspects in raising children. And so I really wanted to kind of delve into this because a lot of things that he was talking about, on the obviously on the surface, and when we get into a little bit of deeper meaning, it's like, really, we're talking about this in 2025? Like, have we not seen obviously the evolution of families? We know scientifically there is no evidence of, people who are under the queer umbrella that does not have any retrospect on whether children identify under the same umbrella as well or anything like that. So I just really wanted to kind of frame the conversation of the ignorance around the nature of some of like the questions that he was raising. So I think where this stems from though is that the ignorance aspect of it.
Mhm.
It's a refusal to like acknowledge reality despite, again, we even have scientific evidence. So even if you didn't want to believe what five people are telling you, the fact is, if you are a numbers person, if you are an evidence-based person, you can even go look at evidence that still back up those claims. So where this stems from is that I think that sexuality is something this stems from. I think that sexuality is something that is taught or imparted rather than it being internal. So sometimes people don't understand that. Sexuality is a kind of complex identity that includes biological, psychological, and social factors. And so, where some of this kind of ill advised rhetoric comes from is that people believe, if we're going to stick in the context of gay men, are somehow inherently unfit or suspect as fathers because their sexual orientation supposedly undermines, right, proper masculine or heterosexual development. So because we have lived in a world where straightness is the default, the natural or the preferred state, we've always, kind of looked at queerness in a kind of deviant, kind of learned, or some people even say contagious, kind of aspect, which I hate using that word, but of course it's been used in in history. And so again, just to kind of contextualize some of the things that he was talking about, I think it really does stem from a lot of cultural anxiety, right? So the things that he was talking about, it assumes that heterosexuality is morally superior and that deviation from that there's a need for it to be corrected or prevented. So when we talk about gender, and specifically in the nature of how he was talking about masculinity, this kind of masculinity anxiety, a gay father in this logic cannot model real manhood because his identity is going to supposedly corrupt um, a son's kind of pathway to being a normal man or a straight man. So again, this of course reinforces that kind of toxic masculinity we bring up, and the idea that fatherhood equals reproducing like this kind of patriarchal, kind of masculinity ideals or, what have you. So I just, kind of wanted to get, like your insights about when people have this kind of, kind of like thinking or this streamline of thinking that because you are queer, you operate in the umbrella of LGBTQ, that somehow if you are working with children or you raise children, that there is something innately in you that cannot raise straight children, I guess, if that's even the
Mhm.
right thing to, kind of frame it for.
Yeah. It when people like this guy, my immediate thought is like, well, how are you showing up for the children in your lives? Because I need that question to be answered first before we even talk about what's happening with other people and their kids. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how are you ensuring that you're raising your kids to be, especially if you have young boys, to be what you deem as being straight? And then the other question, if we are following logic, so who's raising the gay kids? So do
Right.
you raise the kid to be gay? Like,
Right. Yeah,
h-
exactly.
how is that supposed to work as though parenting does not shift because a person happens to be a certain type of sexuality? And even go a little bit further, especially if the mindset is that gay men are more effeminate, therefore cannot be masculine. So, do you find comfort in women being the primary raiser of kids? Because if that's the case, then you're not being raised by a masculine figure, and this same person is teaching, in quotes, this child how to be heterosexual or to be a heterosexual man. So the logic is just not sitting in the corner where you are. It's quite
Yeah.
far away, probably in three buildings over at this point, because regardless of what a person's sexuality is, you don't teach a person how to be this. Like, we have enough media, like,
Mm,
to really paint the picture of what heteronormativity is. Therefore, you don't really even have to pick up a book to learn what anything about it. It's right there. Every time you watch a film, is right there. It's called heteronormativity for a reason, because it is our normal. So there's not much work that any person will have to do to actually teach a person about their sexuality if you are heterosexual. But what you can teach your child is, especially a young boy, is how to be a kind and caring man,
yes,
to exercise masculinity in a healthy way. Now, if that's not the conversation you're having, it sounds like you just want this person to be more of a brute, which is, how is that really doing anything about teaching them,
right,
one, how to be a man, and also about their sexuality? If they don't know how to treat a woman, you're already failing. They don't know how to treat somebody like they're human, you're already failing.
right. Yeah. Yeah. And then I know that there was also a second part to his video where he was talking about like, the nature of being raised, like if you're raised, as a gay man, like how does that translate into like the whole protection, like of women, like again, just this whole awful rhetoric around like not being a real man. And one of the comments I would love to bring up from the nature of that video is if you're not familiar with Lamont White, he is known as like the gay dating coach. Black man runs the service Better Way to Meet. And I love how he posted in the comments, and I'm gonna read this directly because I don't want to get his comment wrong. I loved how he said, if manhood is based on how you can protect and provide for a woman, then gay men got that on lock. It's heterosexual men who are harming and taking advantage of women. Look in the mirror. And I wanted to harp on the nature of that comment because it's really uh saying about one, I think how manhood has been seen as a protect and provide, right? So we provide financially to support, our, women and children, right? We protect, women and our family from harm, right? So um, I love how he points out that the irony is that while men are expected to protect women, it is hetero men who are statistically the most common source of harm to women, through intimate partner violence, SA, workplace inequity, emotional exploitation. And then we can just get into the simple kind of common truth, right? If we take that logic seriously, many gay men who embody the protector, provider role do it without perpetuating the same cycle of harm. Why?
Mhm.
Because as a gay man, if you are a, kind of same gender loving man and, your interest is not in women sexually, right? Not going to speak for all because, never speak for all, but typically gay men are not invested in controlling women's sexuality or reproductive choices or independence, right?
Mhm.
So many, so that had, the whole aspect of the solidarity in women's movements, reproductive rights, HIV and AIDS activism has always been women's rights, queer rights fighting alongside, each other. So,
Mhm.
so again, if we even just, kind of take that logic, it's like, yeah, let's actually look in the mirror for that comment that, that this gentleman was posting.
Yeah, and to bring back the discussion again, the difference between choosing the man and the bear. There's a reason behind that.
Mhm. Yeah,
And even though it was specific in terms of the sexuality, is one of those things like, no, I will rather be out in the forest with a bear. I understand that that's their territory. And if a bear mauls me or whatever, and I'm in their space, it makes sense. But I
Mm,
can be in any space with a male, and this is especially coming for like the perspective of women. And I can be at a club, I can be in my own home, and I can be at their home, I can be at work, and there's still a possibility of you being in a not so safe space just because of the presence of a man being there. So we have to really think about what we're trying to say when we're talking about the role of masculinity, especially as the person who's supposed to teach a kid how to be a man. Like,
mhm.
if being a man means abusing women, then you're already failing. So is that
Right.
the message that you want to carry over?
Yeah.
Because, like you mentioned, queer people, queer men are not the perpetrators of violence against women. Just not.
Yeah.
Does that mean that it doesn't happen? Absolutely not. Things happen, but
Right.
the main category of people that is um,
Exactly.
perpetrating those acts are heterosexual men.
Right. And you know, and I also wonder if part of like that comment that, you know, this gentleman was raising in this video was because there is often a kind of control over like
Hmm.
lineage and legacy as well. You know, like many fathers, and especially when it comes to like broader society, of course, project legacy onto like especially their sons. So the fear of a son being gay, right, is or you know or queer is tied to this you know anxiety about a kind of stale continuation of like a straight bloodline, which is
Hmm.
not just about family, but it's about preserving a certain idea of tradition and order, right? So I also think about that mindset. And then I also think about just like where comments like this, you know, not just from the gentleman, but people who think along these lines, you know, it stems from, I think it also stems from a mistrust of, you know, the queer community, right?
Hmm.
Queerness here is not seen as you know, it's not something that's neutral. You know, we're not seen as, you know, leveling from human to human, but it's like as a containment, right? The mindset comes from a place of seeing particularly gay men as threats rather than as nurturing figures,
Hmm.
despite, you know, evidence that is contrary. One of the things I would love to bring up is like just really quickly, I love how Good Morning America, I think recently had a spotlight special about the nature of how so many gay men are technically what we call gunkles, right? You know, like the play on words of being a gay uncle. And they had these whole video spotlights of a lot of gay men who, you know, do probably maybe do not have their own families or have chosen not to, of course, have their own families, but they are like they say, the gunko, you know, and just
Hmm.
having this whole like kind of positive spotlight on and the kids in the video saying like how much they love their gunkles, you know, and how much they love spending time with them, what they teach and instill in them, you know, and things like that. So again, it just goes to prove that when you have a rhetoric like the gentleman in this video and others like him who think along these lines,
Hmm.
how people cling to myths because they align with their worldview. You know,
Hmm.
even like I say, even if you didn't want to take somebody, if somebody told this gentleman or somebody told the people that have this mindset something differently, you can have 100 people who tell this, you know, tell something differently. You still may not believe it, but okay, let's take that for what it is. If you're more of a logic person and you more of a numbers person, even scientific evidence does not support, you know,
Right.
that kind of level of thinking. You know, so when you cling to these kind of ideals, it really is because you're trying to preserve this so you know a kind of social, political, or religious kind of mindset that you just refuse to like expand or to let go.
Right. And that type of mindset is what prevents community building,
Mhm.
because if you really care about a child and you want to make sure that they have a village, like you brought up with the uncles and everything, you want to have a village to be there for that child where they can have multiple people that they can rely on for advice, comfort, support, knowledge, wisdom, all those things. And if you believe our whole space for that myth that just because a person happens to love differently than you are, that they have no value, then you're really cutting this person off on a genuine connection of their own development. Um, Advice to help them be a better person out here in this world, of having someone that they can rely on when you fail, when you may not have the emotional capacity to relate to a certain situation that they're going through. When a friend of theirs, just say, let's say this kid happens to be heterosexual, but they have a queer friend and they don't know how to really talk to their friend about something that they're going through, they can go to that family member who's
Hmm.
queer and get the advice that they need so that they can show up and be a better support to this person that they care about. Like, you're
Exactly.
really blocking the blessing that it is of having these groups of people around. And another thing that, even though it's not relevant towards the child rearing aspect, but it's just I'm tired of people bringing it up. Is like when he brought up something related to marriage and was like, oh, one of them is going to be the bride, so who pays for it?
Hmm.
And it's like, sir, you are talking about two men. You do not have to make
Yeah.
anybody a bride. It's two husbands, and sometimes,
Right.
depending on the queerness of that person, if they want to be considered a bride, then yes, you will have a bride. But don't act that obtuse about how this stuff
Exactly.
works. If somebody wants to pay for a wedding, they pay for the wedding. And guess what? Here's the real gag. Oftentimes, especially when it comes to queer folk and their weddings, it doesn't matter which parent is going to be taking care of it, because most of the time they have the funds themselves. Because this is
Mm.
what happened when you don't have to worry about raising kids.
Exactly, exactly. And like I say, even just to go back to Lamont White's comment about like that gag about like look in the mirror, like because literally if heterosexual men's claim to manhood, right, rests on protecting women, right,
Mm-hmm.
then it's kind of like, then you must also confront the fact that so often heterosexual men are the ones that women need protection from. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so again, looking in that kind of mirror aspect, right? So it really goes to show like the fragility that we have in patriarchy, right? Because it sets up this definition of masculinity that many men fail at upholding. Then it's kind of like now you want to lash out at queer men or the queer community for existing outside of that framework, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, I want to bring up something that you said again, right? It is we're not talking about this to like romanticize that, all gay men or all, queer people are in, are seen as inherently safe or enlightened. No, of course not. Queer communities also, of course, have work to do when it comes to sexism and misogyny, which is
Mm-hmm.
something we'll talk about at the end of the show. But, this kind of comment, reveals how I would say heteropatriarchy gaslights itself because it preaches protect women, but normalizes violence, control, and exploitation as well. It vilifies queer men as less masculine, yet queer men in general often demonstrate a form of masculinity that is more often rooted in compassion, care, that solidarity aspect, rather than, kind of domination. Again, it's not to say for all queer communities, but in general,
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think the reality is like if we're going to talk about like I think what manhood is or what manhood is meant to mean in like 2025, right? It can't simply be about, these traditional aspects of protecting and providing. Yes, that's a basis, but we can't just stop there, right?
Right.
It has to be about not being the source, well, one, not being the source of harm in the first place, right? But it also is, working to prove that gay men or, again, people in the queer community that we're not saying, like gay men are proving that, we're better men by default, but we're exposed. But what I think the queer community continues to do is expose the hypocrisy in hetero definitions of something like masculinity. And so I think I can attribute that to how, like, when we talk about like civil rights and human rights, right? No, we're not asking to be treated, people, class and systems are not asking to be treated better than anybody else. We just
Right.
want the same rights and protections like anybody else.
It's same as
You
anybody.
and somehow that gets misconstrued into the whole, oh, this is just a DEI effort, and we go into this whole song and dance, but that's a whole nother show and a whole nother topic.
And the
But
whole rant.
in a whole rant. But yeah, so yeah, hopefully, we still have some very, very growing to do, even still in 2025, we're always evolving and things like that. But it's important, to bring things like this to the table. So,
Right.
but yeah. But any more comments before we move on?
Not from me. So I guess
All right. Well, yeah, so what is next on our bucket to discuss?
so. People, I'm just gonna say that up front, stop using ChatGPT in general, but also stop using ChatGPT as a therapist. What are we doing? This is not what AI is supposed to be used for. And there's people that we can pay for that. All right, like so essentially there's been it's been going on for some time now.
Okay.
But there's been people leaning into utilizing AI as
Mm,
their therapist. And
mm,
I've heard people say this in passing that they do that. I've recently met people in person who said that. I have a client who brought that up to me that they do it. And we had a
interesting.
conversation. I have even today I had a conversation with another client who used it for, and he's using it as a tool. So I told
Okay.
him, okay, what you're doing, not too bad, but it does not do the emotional things. Okay, it does not
Right.
understand emotions. Please continue to see me. First and foremost, I see you for free. Come on, stop. Continue to come to these sessions because you need that. So,
Mm,
yeah, I'm not saying this is like a PSA or anything, but it is important for people to recognize that the AI system does not have emotional intelligence, right? It cannot give you, it may use emotional language. It may seem as though it is empathizing with you because of what its responses are, but it is artificial intelligence, okay? It does not have
mm,
that capability of grasping the real life implications of some of the things that you share with it. For example, there have been people who use ChatGPT as a therapist and they're experiencing a manic episode or a depressive episode or just
mm,
having underlying ideations, since we can't say the real word on these internet spaces.
mm,
And the AI essentially told them to go ahead and do what they need to do to check up out of here. The punch card is in. Take care of yourself and sign out. And
mm,
an actual human being would have told you otherwise. A professional would have
mm,
told you otherwise and provided you with the additional resources that you needed. These AI feed into your confirmation bias. This is why the advice that they're giving you seems spot on, is because you're feeding them a scenario that's going to work in your best interest.
right.
And a therapist, a coach, a good friend will tell you something completely different. Like, hey, I understand that you're feeling this way. I get that you just don't understand the behaviors that you've been dealing with and how they're leading to these certain things. I see you, I understand you, but this is certain things that we can do to improve on that, right? ChatGPT cannot give you the true emotional response that you need. It
Yeah.
only validates and leans into the confirmation bias that you have already created. It's like going to Reddit and asking everybody for the "Am I asshole?" And
Mm,
just following that advice, which is better than ChatGPT because the people that's responding to you has the some level of emotional awareness to actually give you some adequate advice about whatever the heck is going on. Be it recognize themselves in a party in your story, or they themselves has experienced something similar to you, and they're providing you some of their wisdom. So from that, what are some of your thoughts about using AI as a source for therapy?
Yeah, so no, I'm glad that you mentioned that because I have heard like some people doing that, and I think it's because of a lot of reasons. I think that yes, of course, the forward-facing one is like okay, um, like people just may not want to pay for therapy, so it's like why
Mhm.
pay for therapy if I could just like put something into Chat GPT or Ask AI, they can just tell me for free. But I think it's about more than that. I think that like when I talk as an educator, like when I've talked to some of my students, when they've said that they've used, Chat GPT or AI, it's has started off, of course, as like, as like you raised about your client, as like this kind of like supplemental, kind of like assistive aspect. That it's like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, yeah, I may use this for like one time or two times help or something like that. But just like with anything, and we've had these conversations very early on about I think what people are now beginning to do is that what we've always kind of feared, they're becoming very dependent
Mm.
on the nature of this AI system, like you said, that learns certain things about your personality and as you said, confirmation bias. So it works just like an algorithm. The more you talk to it, the more that it frames, answers and conversations around what you would likely want to hear. So, so just like you said, like, AI, I think it is like the one positive I will say is that I think AI can act as a between sessions tool. Like you say, for like helping clients, maybe like keep track of like moods or like maybe like rehearse like coping strategies or or reflect on something something that has been made mention in therapy and it's kind of like oh okay well I have another week before I go to another session so maybe I just want to kind of brief reminder just to see if like there's any elaboration about this particular technique. Okay, that's something specific.
Mhm.
However, like you say, one of the main aspects about asking chat gpt for things is that again we just have a lack of genuine empathy. I think AI can simulate empathy, but it can't feel it because it's a computer, right? So you're missing that human aspect of how I've heard of course therapists ultimately say like your body language tells the story of what your words won't. So AI can't pick up on your body language. You may be asking it a question about something, but if you're fidgeting while doing it, it's not picking up that.
Mhm.
You know, um, you know, uh, I would also say like AI can't like intervene in emergencies the way a human therapist could. Also, something also we have to make sure that we are concerned about is a lot of times we talk about with AI the nature of data privacy, right?
Mhm.
So sensitive, personal disclosures of information you tell into an AI system, you know, AI can't really be held accountable. However, when you have a licensed therapist, as of course, as you are bound by professional ethics and can face consequences or like malpractice or something like,
Mhm.
something along those lines. So yeah, there's not a lot of things that can happen. And then of course, whenever you're in therapy, I think that a lot of times you're talking about complex issues, right? So AI may, yeah, give you a generalized or, kind of formulaic response to something.
Mhm.
But if you're talking about trauma history, something cultural or family dynamics, like that's way too complex
Mhm.
for an AI system to do. So yeah, I think that in some ways, yeah, it can be seen as like, okay, I can see actually like the positive or the pro to this, but like as a form of just like we're trying to replace actual human Therapy. No, absolutely not.
Right, right. Like, and I'm glad that you brought up the confidentiality aspect of everything
Mhm.
because that part is important. And I know, like, even on this podcast, I say, a client and I talked about this, that, and the third, but I don't even say too much where if one of my clients happen to hear this, they'd be like, oh, is Bernie talking about me? Because they would not know. Like, even in the conversation, half the time, I don't even say, specific enough information, like this ChatGPT thing. There's been at least four clients who brought ChatGPT up in session. So that
Mm,
means four people can have the belief that, oh, Vernon's talking about me. Wait, no. No, because because you
mm,
have to keep things broad enough so that people do not recognize that you are even talking about them or even making reference to them. Like I cannot even get on these internet spaces and talk about specific examples related
mm,
to client experiences. Like even when it comes to like the one thing that AI is not able to do is map certain behaviors. Like you
mm,
said, it cannot read body language, but it also cannot really develop a pattern of understanding how you behave. It only goes off of the information that you feed it. And if you're
mm.
not aware of the behaviors that you are doing, then the algorithm, the AI is not going to recognize that as well. Like you can say, "Oh, I heard a large boom and it just scared me and I ran away from it." And it probably wasn't even a loud boom, like a door slamming or something like that. And yes,
Mm,
the AI can make a response to it. The AI can potentially diagnose as PTSD, but what it cannot do if you're in a movie theater and you hear a clap and you feel anxiety and you go back to the AI talking about that, it may not even associate that door slam with the hand claps that brought that anxiety up. They will only look at that as an isolated event and not even a symptom of PTSD happening. And it can't even, based off of whatever you share with it, even help you identify the triggering event and why those certain things are correlating with each other.
right.
Because
Yeah,
it doesn't have that information and it won't be able to connect
exactly.
those dots
Yeah,
effectively.
yeah, exactly. And because I was trying to think about like, okay, what would somebody see as like the positive aspect or a pro aspect
Mhm.
for AI compared to human therapy? Now, the one thing I think that, and not to say that this is brought up, but I could see like a perspective of this is I think a lot of times the reason, of course, it's always people always talk about like sometimes obviously therapy doesn't is not necessarily something that sticks the first time. So
Mhm.
you may have to go to different therapists to find out, to find like who meshes with you. And so I do think that there is an element where people may think that, okay, well, at least with talking to like a computer, like there's like maybe like a radical non-judgment of some kind. Like, people may, obviously, as you know, in therapy, disclose like, I don't know, like taboo fantasies or like very
Mhm.
shameful secrets or, very things that, they would normally feel stigmatized for. And sometimes even in therapy, I can only imagine that a lot of people sometimes do feel judged. And, obviously even from their therapists. And so, um, even though I believe always like a therapist's work is to, help you with give you tools or help you with tools to reflect on and implement into your own life.
Mhm.
It's still one of those things like if I come to a therapy session with you and I'm revealing something that, is taboo or, or I find to be shameful, even if you're not doing anything and, that, would be judgmental, it's like, oh, wait a minute. My therapist was looking down when I said that, or like when I said
Mhm.
they were writing down something, or like they kind of had this look on their face. I can interpret anything that you do, just like you're trying to internalize my body language and things like that. I could be
Mhm.
doing the same thing to you as I'm talking with you. So innately, now, okay, now I'm feeling judged. So at least with talking to a computer, even though it's just computing and spilling out, generalized and, information and things like that, at least I feel like maybe a computer doesn't judge me,
Right.
you know. So I was thinking like, maybe that's one of the maybe like a pro like people see to like talking, to AI or ChatGPT as a form of therapy rather than, being in, obviously talking to a human.
Yeah, and I definitely see how that can be a benefit for people. And then, being in the field, my immediate thought is that's why we shop around. That's why
Hmm.
we continue to do the work for ourselves because you want to find a good fit. You want to find a therapist who you feel comfortable enough to talk about those things that other people may judge you about, especially when it comes to like kinks and whatnot. You want to find somebody who specializes in the thing that you are most concerned about. And it's
Hmm.
possible just by doing a nice little Google search, going on Psychology Today, going on something like a therapy den, therapist.com, whatever the case may be, you have options to really isolate and find what you may want to talk to a person about. And I would hate for a person to disclose certain things about what they experience and not even get the proper resources that they need. For
Right.
example, a kid using ChatGPT and they disclose that a parent is harming them in
Hmm.
whatever way that harm may look, it's best for that kid to receive proper resources, even if that does mean removing that kid from that home in order for them to find more safety and with being at a family members or whatever the case may be. It's better for that child to have that than to be in a situation to consistently be harmed by this individual. Um,
Hmm.
ChatGPT doesn't have a software built in inside of it where it will be able to contact the proper authorities for this person, which I get how that can sound like a relief. Because
Hmm.
it's not going to be able to contact anybody, but at the end of the day, you're also not receiving the help that you need. And it's the help
Right.
that brought you to ChatGPT and you're not getting it.
Yeah, I kind of think of it as like when we look at like the shows like Catfish, when we talk
Mhm,
about like relationships, like where people have never met, and for whatever reason they just have all these excuses about like why they've been in. For me, it's always been like people been in relationships for 5, 6, 7 years and they've never met, and I'm like, how does this happen?
mhm,
I understand schedules are busy and things like that, but like, okay, but no, we have to actually at some point be in person to see if this actually works. The reason why I bring that up is because I think one of the innate drawbacks, I think, to thinking about therapy, in the context of ChatGPT is like you may feel like, oh, because I'm computing this, like, oh, this AI knows me. Like it knows me in a deep way because, like we said, it's computing, it's learning me. So it's
mhm,
giving me confirmation bias. But AI, as we say, it can't reciprocate, so it can cause this kind of, I think, I'm just going to say delusionment or even attachment
mhm,
to it. And that's how it becomes like a very like dependent aspect. And that's what we fear in education a lot of times as we've been talking about AI and chat GPT over the years. A lot of people have had to, find ways to deal with it in different ways. But one of the things that we're so concerned about with students is that they will get to a place of not even trying to do their own work. They're just gonna ask, the chat GPT to write them a whole paper about something or whatever. And yeah, I happen to work in the field of English, so we have conversations about words and language all the time. We can suss that out very quickly. But
mhm,
again, it's the more so aspect of this is just readily available for students, and now it's kind of like they don't even have to put in almost even any effort, you
mhm,
know.
mhm,
And then I think also too, like even when you're talking to AI, when you're having computer responses, like a computer, yes, can mirror words like, like, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, or, like, I hear your pain. But of course, again, it's not a human.
mhm,
Like you're not getting the subtleties of like a pause or like eye contact or smile. And that's also crucial to I think like the human healing process,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then because you are asking something like, for instance, I think ChatGPT does this a lot, is that they tend to give you very, not necessarily just robotic answers, but just very quick things. So it's,
Mm-hmm.
and because I actually, a colleague of mine read this recently with the Chat GPT-5 that came out. As it's trying to learn to be more human, one of the things that it can't do is that it can't extend for a long period of time because it's computation. So it's always going to offer quick solutions to things. So it may encourage, you to fix your emotions, instead of sitting with them, which is often right a part of the healing process.
Mm-hmm.
And then like you brought up, you can just have like this very big risk of just misinformation. Like you can ask AI something, and yeah, it can still generate huge inaccuracy or misleading advice that a trained therapist such as yourself would never give.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Exactly.
yeah.
And oh, especially if it's like sex related, because there's nothing but misinformation out there. Or even,
Mm,
let's say, if you happen to be a parent who's trying to do great for your trans kid, and you just go out there and turn to ChatGPT, you're not going to get the proper advice that you need. It's just going, that is definitely where you're going to get a lot of misinformation, because there's
mm,
a lot more misinformation than actual research when it comes to trans individuals, just in
mm,
general. And it's not necessarily because we don't have an understanding of how the trans experience work, based off of some of the research that's already been completed. It's just that it's so limited that you just rely on those same things. But since it's kind of niche in terms of people educating themselves about it, you get more information that's contrary to that than the actual facts of the matter. So you want to make sure that even if you're going to be using it for the advice of that, you might have to go out and feed it some information from a reputable source. And if you're going to go out and find the reputable source, you might as well just stay there and learn. Like that would be the best thing. Um,
mm,
it's
yeah.
just not. Yes, as a tool, we can use it. Or honestly, as a tool, we need to utilize more environmentally friendly and safe
Mm,
AI platforms. But AI as a tool, very much so helpful and necessary. But as a space for empathy and your own self-development, probably not the place you need to go. AI is not going to help you get the job that you want. Unfortunately, it would be great if it could. Unless
mm,
you are programming AI, that's the only way that AI is going to help you get your own job. But um, is not going to be able to really help you as effectively with your relationships. Yes, it can provide some advice, but it has its limits.
mm,
It's not human. And that's the thing
right.
that people really do need to understand and walk away with.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
I mean
so
that, yeah.
that's that for my things.
Yeah.
So I know bisexuality was the how we closed.
Yeah. No, and it's so great that we can circle back around because, we started tonight's episode with, discussing harmful stigmas that, of course, exist in heterosexual mindsets. And we ended that conversation by saying that, even for people in the queer community, it's obviously it's not a utopia when it comes to thinking, and, mindset and things like that. And something that we have had a very persistent issue with that is historically rooted. And again, as much, evolution as we've had, it's still a major stigma. And so we're going to end the show tonight talking about why is usually the B in LGBTQ always like the ignored letter of the alphabet or or the acronym. The nature of the venom that is spewed towards people who identify as being bisexual. And I just want to, kind of start off the conversation with the fact that I think if we look at this from like a historical, kind of point of view, especially for Western culture, because if obviously we know, um, we have had dignitaries, hierarchy, hierarchies of people, kings and queens, a lot of people have, obviously been on the grid spectrum of bisexuality throughout history. That's not a new thing. But I think specifically when we talk about Western culture, I think has long been locked into binary frameworks. You either are male or female, you are either gay or straight, and something has always been, I think, the nature of bisexuality disrupts that kind of system, right? It refuses to be in like this kind of neatly defined category, which makes, I think, bisexuality coming from a hetero sort of mindset and a queer sort of mindset as something that is viewed as dangerous,
Mm.
right? So that's a binary thinking of it. Again, historically, if we think about this from a medical sort of standpoint, there were many medical studies that kind of tried to pathologize um, bisexuality as confusion or immaturity, or, like you've gone through some unstable stage of life, on the way to being like fully straight or fully gay, And of course, these are outdated frames, but they still, I think, like linger, when we think about like memory, how they say like our memory is longer than our lifespan, So binary aspect, medical, and the last thing I want to say for historical point of view, political. Of course, we always have politics involved, in everything we do. Specifically, I know, in the gay rights, kind of movement, especially from the 70s to the 90s, right? Bisexual people, of course, were often dismissed as unreliable allies or accused of watering down the fight for visibility because bisexuality was always seen as, okay, you just sitting on the fence. Like it's kind of like pick a lane. You either want to be straight or you want to be gay. Like pick a lane, you know. So again, I just wanted to, kind of introduce this kind of topic about why we feel like, the B for bisexuality is always ignored in the acronym for queerness. And why there's so much venom spewed. But again, just to kind of contextualize. But what's some of your thoughts about the ways in which we have viewed bisexuality and the way we may still continue to view it?
So, for those who do not know, I am bisexual and love it, right?
Mm.
So, as the resident bi on the panel. But no, it is a needed conversation because bi-erasure is so very real, especially when it comes to cis male or just male specific bi-erasure, and it continues to persist throughout the ages for whatever reason. Like there's still conversations that are happening about, oh, your own, and this does happen. This does happen
Mm,
where you may find a gay man who takes on on the label as bi to make it a little bit easier for him to transition into his full
mm,
gay identity, which is fine. It happens. It is what it is. But just because that happens does not mean it gives licensure to invalidate the experience as a whole, as though people cannot exist in whatever aspect of bisexuality that it may be. Just like anything, bisexuality exists on the spectrum where you may have people
mm,
like myself who's a little bit more homoromantic, meaning I'm more likely to engage with males for romantic purposes
mm,
than I may with women. But at the same time, I'm open to being in a romantic relationship with a woman, specifically trans women. So
mm,
there, that does not invalidate my
mm,
own existence as a bisexual male. And even in the terms of sexuality. I'm very open to engaging in sexual experiences with cis men, trans women, cis women, and non-binary folk. Like I'm very open in engaging in that, which some people may just put me in the pan category, and that's a different conversation of how those are essentially the same, but there's a little difference. But it's the same umbrella. And those who live it understand it, and those who want to represent it, they need to just sit their asses down. Um, but there's there's this space that's just been created where bisexual people don't have the autonomy to exist as ourselves because there is this innate desire to just label us based off of who it is that we're in relationship with. Like I know several bisexual men specifically who are in heterosexual presenting relationships. Their partner knows that they're bi. Many of them are married, and some are parents.
Mm,
People seeing them may deem them as being heterosexual, but their partner rocks for them, understands them, their bisexual identity and respects it. And
mm,
it's not like it invalidates or it removes that identity. Is just this is who I'm in partnership with, and this is who I feel comfortable with sharing my life with. It doesn't
mm.
mean this person happened to be straight this entire time. Doesn't mean this person finally came out as being gay. And it also doesn't mean that this person is promiscuous. It just means that their attraction, their sexual interest just have to have a little bit of fluctuation that other people may not understand. And that's about it.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I think coming from, I think a lot of times like heterosexual communities, that promiscuous stereotype, I think is very, very prevalent. Like bisexual people I think are often branded as being greedy or inherently like unfaithful, right?
Mm,
Which kind of like reflects that moral panic around like if you are, like non-monogamous or sexually open, kind of like how, I am. I'm an ethically non-monogamous person. But I think speaking, and of course I do not speak for an entire, LGBTQ community, of course not. But I think that for queer communities, I think it's the aspect of seeing bisexuality as like non-commitment. I've heard a lot of times in conversations that people who are getting to know someone who is bisexual or, somebody has openly, said that they're bisexual, I think even when you say yes, that this is like okay for me, there's always that slight twinge in the back of your head that, okay, but when shit hits the fan, or, something happens,
mhm,
will they choose straight privilege? Or because of the fact that your sexuality can be seen as something transitional. And I
mhm,
think that that's a fear. I've heard it, well, especially I will say specifically as a, Black SGL man, I've specifically heard that in kind of like obviously gay circles, that there's this mindset that I may not necessarily have a problem innately with the fact that you are bisexual, but this problem stems from the fact that, okay, what is your level of commitment to me or to us when I could turn around one day and we're out and, like I'm just gonna say this out loud, like you could just be checking out some other woman, you know, or,
mhm,
and I think that there's a dichotomy that comes with that because if we're talking about the nature of commitment, people go through their ebbs and flows. If we just talk about cheating, for instance, it's one thing if we're both men in a relationship and okay, I may be worried or I may have insecurity about you being with another man. Of
mhm,
course, that's a typical, I'm not going to say typical, that's the wrong word to use, but that's like a logic to, I think for most gamers,
mhm,
that's like a logical mindset. But then it's kind of like, okay, now I'm about to be extra crazy. Now I wouldn't say crazy, I don't like using that term, but I'm about to be extra kind of out of my mind if I'm thinking about the fact that, okay, I could wake up one day and you could be not just with another man, but you could also be with another woman or
Mhm.
anybody else that's on the sexuality spectrum. So I think there's this kind of thing of like, I think we try to police bisexuality and
Mhm.
that we don't really do to, I think, a lot of other sexual identities.
Mhm.
So I think there's that fear of just non-commitment, and then it's kind of like how we've always had the race conversation about people who are, biracial or who have multiple races. Like, if you choose, you can pass if you want to,
Mhm.
whereas I don't have that choice. And I
Mm.
think that sexuality, I think that many, like for instance, gay men feel like that. It's like, okay, at the end of the day, if I identify as a gay man, I have to operate and live in that space always. However, you as somebody being bisexual, you can choose straight privilege if you want to,
Mhm.
you know. And it's not to say that that's entirely true, but I think that's just where the mindset comes from.
Yeah, and I think a part of that is where the partner plays a role too, where
Mm,
whenever there is an assumption that this is a heterosexual relationship where you have the opportunity to confirm or deny and say, no, this is actually a queer relationship because my partner's bi, or the
mm,
the bi individual just mentioned, no, I'm 100% bi. Like I don't get why you thought that, but I appreciate you. Like, there's
mm,
ways to have those conversations, and I know there are some people who actually prefer other people, meaning like the non-bi person may prefer to be in a relationship with a bi person without anybody knowing that their partner is bi, because they may have some issue with other people knowing that this person may have been with men or women, however the dynamic may look in terms of the
mm,
individual that's in that relationship. So I think a lot of this is people needing to be open to sitting with their own insecurities and naming it when it shows up, because
yeah.
that's the only way you really work through it, is understanding that the reason why I may have issues with dating somebody by and will bring up the, oh, I can't compete with I'm already having to compete with other men and now have to compete with
Mm,
women
right,
too. And
right.
sometimes that may just be coming from a place of insecurity, and that's okay.
Mm,
Or even just having a scarcity mindset versus an abundance mindset, how that
mm,
makes a huge difference. And it's like this person is making a conscious decision to choose you every single day, then you're not in competition with any other person because they have proven themselves to be open to choosing you. Now,
mm,
if something happens, because anybody can be a cheater, anybody can be I was gonna say infidelic, but that's not a word. But can initiate infidelity however they fit, but it's not because their sexuality, it's just because they're a cheating mofo. They're gonna
mm,
cheat because they're a cheater, right? It's not because they're bi, it's not because of anything about them just wanting to pursue something new and fresh because they haven't been with that gender or sex for a long time. No, they are a cheater because they're a cheater. The same way a heterosexual male can be a cheater, a bisexual male can be a cheater. The same way a heterosexual woman, a female can be a cheater, so can a bisexual woman or female. Like it's
right,
not based off of the sexuality, it's based off of them as a person. And I
right.
wish that a lot more people would actually start to delineate or dissociate that aspect from the identity and just look at everybody as human beings before we look at their sexuality. Because the sexuality gives information, but it doesn't give us the full identity of anybody.
Absolutely. And because we are two, Black men, I do also want to bring up like the role of media and how media plays into bisexuality because I'm thinking about three very specific examples. So y'all know I love talking about TV shows, movies, and culture. So if you want to tune out and come back in, we can put a little place tag timestamp if you don't want to be spoiled by any of these shows or movies. But the three specific examples about Black people and bisexuality that I would love to bring up is one from the show that came on with Taraji P. Henson and Terrence Howard, Jesse Smollett, Empire.
No.
That fans went into mass hysteria when Jesse Smollett's character Jamal uh, slept with Alicia Keys' character that and when she guest starred on season 1 because the writers had framed Jamal as this black young uh gay like artist, very talented, things like that. And so fans went into a frenzy when the episode aired of him meeting Alicia Keys, who was playing in a character, a different artist, and they were singing a song. They got caught up in the moment. They kissed, and we didn't see like a sex scene or anything like that, but we do learn that they in fact did sleep together. And the conversation that Jesse Smollett's character has to have with his mother, Taraji P. Henson, when she makes the comment about, first you sleeping with men, now you sleeping with women, like, like pick a, again, like that, pick a team, and
Mhm.
like he says, like nothing has changed about how I operate. So I have slept with what 1, 2 women in my life. That doesn't make me this or that. So that's like one prevalent example that always sticks in my mind. Another one comes from I actually served on a panel about this show, and it was an example we brought up during our panel. If y'all know what I'm talking about, Insecure,
Mhm.
the character of Molly, and her seeing this guy, very good guy, Jared, and they had an instance where they were, playing a fun game of Never Have I Ever or something like that. And Molly did openly reveal that she kissed a woman back when she was in college. But the conversation took a bit of a turn when Jared revealed that he did the same thing. And so now all of a sudden, Molly has all these questions about, is he gay? Is he this? Is he that? Now, mind you, of course, we tend to operate from the mindset that we typically believe that men think of 2 women being together as something that's hot, something they want to be a part of, as a threesome or whatever. So he never questioned her about her
Mhm.
experience. But once she found out that he had experimented as well, all bets were off the table. And again, that was another story where fans went into a frenzy because it's like, Molly, girl, why are you up here tripping like this? Like, you have this man who you like, y'all get along great, and you're judging him for an experience that he had that he said that, yeah, I did it. I didn't particularly care for it, so I had never did it again. But yet she still continuously badgered and had questions and ultimately decided that it was something she couldn't get past. So
Mhm.
again, that was one of those girl, like really. Now, a positive example I would like to talk about. Many people may not know. There's a movie, and actually, it's free if you go and watch it on Lifetime. I mean, not on Lifetime. It was a Lifetime movie, but it's free on YouTube, and maybe we can put the link to it. It's called Love by the 10th Date. It was a TV movie, 2017 movie that stars Megan Good. Love by the 10th Date. There's a story in there where her best friend meets this guy who she finds out is bisexual, and she really falls hard for him. And the one thing I appreciated that the movie wrote about his character, they made him stand firm in the nature of being proud of his bisexuality. And as he is coming to conversations with her, he is telling her, listen, I may be bisexual, but listen to me. You are the woman that I love and that I've chosen, and things like that. So I'm not going to spoil the movie, of course, if anybody wants to go and see it, but it is free. It's on YouTube. It's called Love by the 10th Date by Megan Good. It was a really nice movie, but I actually really love the way they actually depicted bisexuality in that movie with that
And
particular
pink salt
story.
really help you slim down while you sleep?
I'm sorry. Can you
Yeah,
hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so yeah, but yeah, that was a really good portrayal, and that was actually the first time I actually, even in 2025, actually saw not necessarily saw a positive portrayal of bisexuality, but seen it where like somebody really took pride and they were not going to like let somebody else, even for somebody else who they care for, diminish their identity. So it's
Mhm.
kind of like, listen, I may love you and I may be involved with you, and let me be very clear, like you are who I am choosing, and that's really what it comes down to. My sexuality and my choice, yeah, they may be entwined, but listen to my words about I am choosing you. Now, if you have a problem with that, then I can't do anything about that. But I'm not going to be made ashamed to feel who I am, you
Exactly.
know. So yeah, definitely check that out. Love by the 10th Date. So I just
Man,
again wanted to bring up some media examples for how in nature, especially when it comes to people of color and bisexuality,
mhm.
has been portrayed as well.
And I found it, so I'll make sure to include the film in the link in the description of that on,
Cool,
especially on the YouTube channel. So
cool.
speaking of which, go ahead and subscribe over there and everything. Uh,
Yeah,
but yeah, and I love that we do have a lot more. Positive, or even not even just positive portrayals, because there was another one that came out. I just don't remember the show, and I just enjoyed seeing it because it brought back the conversation about dating bisexual men. And this
mhm,
was bisexual black men. It was geared in that lens because of the show that it came from, which I'm so mad I don't remember. And I feel like Natasha Rothwell was in it. And it wasn't Insecure. I know that, but
right,
just how the conversation was talking about, like, if you are looking for somebody who gets you and understand you, first and foremost, for most women, find you a queer man who does engage with women, because you will get that softness, you will get that openness, you will get that vulnerability that you may be looking for in the typical standard heterosexual man, but you get all of what you're looking for in that, plus emotional intelligence without the abuse, for the most part. Not to say that there's not abuse that be out here in these queer streets,
mhm,
because it is possible. But you do get an opportunity of having a different version of love that you get to
right,
receive by opening that door to the possibility. And I get if you are uncomfortable with dating somebody that happens to be bi, and it's not to say you need to or you have to, but it's also important to recognize where that comes from. If you're uncomfortable, you're uncomfortable. It's fine. It's cool. And you can
mhm,
name that. Now, the only thing is being aware if it's biphobia, homophobia that is leaning into that discomfort, because that does also happen too. Because
right,
I know one of the things that frustrates me the most, especially when it comes to conversations of dating and openly bi man, is people automatically assuming, oh, well, if I sleep around with him, then there's a potential of me getting all these STIs, blah, 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 blah. The potential is there dealing with heterosexual men, just in general.
right. Yeah, like that. That is a conversation that doesn't even make sense. Like you do not increase your chances
Not
of
at all.
getting certain STIs or anything like that if you were sleeping with somebody bisexual versus somebody who isn't. Like STIs are gonna be STIs, and people go if you're gonna get you're gonna get like
Mhm.
no, they don't. That doesn't even make sense.
Like, whenever I hear that, regardless of if it's from women or men, my first thought is like, you're letting strangers know how soon it is that you're engaging with people without protection. Because I
Mm,
know way too much information at this point. If you feel as though you engaging with this now known bisexual man, and you're having these thoughts that, okay, maybe we're over here having sex without any type of protection, and we're not having the conversations about sexual health to begin with. Because once you have those conversations and you engage in those conversations on a regular basis, you tend to understand who you want to have sex with without
right.
protection.
Yeah. And then, so I think in general, I think the ways in which we start to evolve our level of thinking and we may start to move past certain ideas is that don't feel like, and this goes for if you are in the, hetero community, queer community, what have you. I
Mhm,
think if you are having questions about bisexuality, ask that person about their experience. Not
mhm,
obviously, not everybody's journey is the same. So
exactly.
before you write somebody off, or you heard that this person, is or was bisexual, or what have you. Even if you're just talking to somebody who has actually had a bisexual experience, like
Mhm,
again, don't be so quick to rush to just snap judgments. It's okay to be like, sometimes taken aback, because of course that happens naturally. Some people, like some people can say something, it's like, oh, okay, well, I wasn't prepared for that. But like
Right.
once you had a minute to collect yourself, actually ask somebody about their experience, because I think in essence, bisexual stigma is really less about bisexual people themselves and more about society's discomfort with fluidity, multiplicity, and like these refusal of like the binary boxes. It really has nothing to do about the person, but
Mhm.
we automatically jump to these conclusions in our head about, okay, yeah, no, uh, bisexual, like, no, I can't fool with this. It's like, why can't you? Like, you don't even know this person's story to know like your experience. Like, if you're not gonna say you can't do this, let it be because like you're just incompatible when it
Right.
comes to values, or let it be because it's something important, not just because, oh, this person happens to be bisexual.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, anything else before we wrap up?
For me, I think that's pretty much it. Just definitely give people space, get to know them before you just outright deny them. Like it helps a
Right.
lot. Like branching out, and this doesn't even have to deal with sexuality or sex in general, just
Yeah.
in everyday life. Sometimes we may preconceive people based off of what we've been exposed to, and sometimes our exposure isn't the truth of everybody. And
Mhm.
it's sometimes useful to create some space to open the door for the potential of a new narrative or a new identity within a group,
Mhm.
before we just close the door to everybody in that.
Yeah.
Because that's where community grows, that's where healing starts, and that's where, we tend to grow ourselves by getting to know somebody that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's pretty much all I got. You?
Yeah. No, no, you said it perfectly. So, just thank you to everybody that continues to, listen and tune in and watch us. We love you. We appreciate you all. And so definitely be sure, as Vernon said earlier, like, share, and subscribe.
Yes. Oh, and we have one more episode left in this season, and then
Yeah.
we'll be taking a quick break and we'll be returning whatever date that is going to be. I think one of the things I'm going to work on is possibly putting out some shorts and stuff on the YouTube channel just to keep some engagement over there. Having a little bit more clips. I really think I'm really thinking about doing something called just out of pocket moments or something like that. Or straight out the pocket, because there's occasionally certain things that come out of our mouth that's just like, what? Y'all not all right.
And look, if you gotten to know us, then you'll know that about us, so it shouldn't come as a surprise.
Right. Shoot. Especially a rant about that damn Dr. Umar. I know I've said out of pocket things and I'm okay with it. The Diddy discussion, out of pocket.
The
All of
Tyler
it.
Perry discussion out of line.
Tyler, we're not talking about her tonight. You're
Look,
not.
look, look. If y'all know, y'all know. If y'all don't, listen to our previous episode.
Go back and
Go
find
back.
out that long beef that Vernon has with Tyler Perry. And it's one sided, and I'm okay with it, but
No, no. That's the thing. We love giving a whole perspective, but we're still people as well. We're gonna hold
yeah,
our own bias, and we're not hiding from that. So we
not at
love
all.
if people have different opinions. Feel free to share your opinions. We always love learning, and things like that. So because something you say may help us think differently. So
Mhm.
always we love to be in conversation and be in community. So that's why we always say make sure to comment, give us a like, and subscribe.
Right. And with that being said, thank you all so much for tuning in to Melanin and Moonlight, your late night space for deep, thought provoking conversations about sex, culture, and the well being of the Black community. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep the vibes flowing and your minds open. Bye.
Bye.